listening to A State of the Union, estate planning made simple. Here's your host, Brad Wewell, from Texas Trust Law in Austin, Texas.
Hi, this is Brad Wewell. We are here with the State of the Union podcast, and with our podcast, we try to delve into different aspects of the law. Sometimes we'll bring in a charity and find out what they do. Sometimes we'll bring in very important public office holders and share what they do. And today we have a very special guest, and we are very thankful to have Judge Sharon Keller. And Judge Keller is the presiding judge of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And everybody's heard about the Texas Supreme Court, but the Court of Criminal Appeals is a court of equal weight. And I'll share this, Sharon. The Supreme Court of Texas doesn't hear any criminal cases. They just hear lawsuits and things that come from lawsuits. And the Court of Criminal Appeals only hears criminal cases. So these are the death penalty cases, the things that really matter. The rubber meets the road of the law. When people think of the law, they typically think of criminal law. So Sharon is the presiding judge. She's the chief judge of this court. And Sharon, thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate you coming.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Tell us what the court does in more detail.
Okay. As you said, the court has criminal jurisdiction and the Supreme Court doesn't.
Right.
So all criminal cases come to us from the misdemeanors on up to the death penalty.
Okay.
We generally have three areas of cases that come to us. We have post-conviction writs of habeas corpus and felony cases. And those are typically an inmate files a pro se application from the prison, sends it to us, challenging the jurisdiction of the court to convict him or raising a constitutional challenge to his conviction.
Let's stop there.
Okay.
We need to interpret.
Okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. When somebody does something pro se, that means they do it on their own without a lawyer.
Right.
They're sitting in jail. They don't like sitting in jail. And maybe sit in jail for like 30, 40 life sentence, right?
Right.
And they can write something to the court?
They do.
Okay. Tell me more about that. That's called a writ of habeas corpus?
That's a writ of habeas corpus.
Okay. There you go.
And that is the biggest part of our docket. It's lower now for a variety of reasons, but there was a time where we would get about 8,000 of those a year.
8,000?
8,000. And these are, I think that was because of the prison expansion program. The prisons used to hold about 30,000 people across the state.
Right.
There wasn't enough room, and there was an expansion in the mid-90s, and now they hold 150,000. So once the prisons started getting bigger, we started getting more
people
petitions,
to file
right.
more petitions, right?
Right.
Interesting. 150,000.
150,000.
It's a lot of people.
It is a lot
of
of
bad
inmates. It is.
Yeah, for sure.
So we also get petitions from the intermediate courts. There are 14 courts around the state that handle direct appeals from convictions. And if someone, an inmate, gets convicted, goes to the Court of Appeals and doesn't get the relief he wants, he or the state
Right.
can file a petition for discretionary review with us.
Okay.
And we don't have to accept those. Most of them we don't. We grant review on about 7% of those.
Okay.
And those are in some ways the most interesting cases because the ones we grant review on, typically there's an issue of statutory interpretation
Okay.
or the courts of appeals have decided something differently from court to court and we want to resolve it. And those are probably the most interesting, but probably the most time-consuming are the death penalty cases.
I would imagine.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of them. We get about 10 a year now. And they come to us on direct appeal. They don't go through the 14 intermediate courts.
Okay.
If someone is convicted and sentenced to death in the trial court, the appeal comes directly to us.
And you have to take it.
We do.
All right.
And there have been times where an inmate wanted to waive his appeal, wanted to go ahead and get executed, and we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the record ourselves and decide what issues there might be and whether he might get relief. So those are time-consuming, but the more time-consuming are the death penalty habeas writs.
Okay, so let's stop here.
Okay.
We're going to break this up because you're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, but you're probably not a lawyer. So I'm going to step back and walk through this again, and then we'll get to the death penalty habeases.
Okay.
This is fascinating stuff. So to put it in context, there are 3 levels of courts in Texas. There is a trial level. Now, the trial level is going to be one of 2 types of courts. It could be a district court or it could be a county court of law. If you're convicted there, you can appeal to, as you said, an intermediate court, and there are 14 of those. Austin has 1, Houston has 2, Dallas has 1, Fort Worth has 1, 14 around the state. If they lose there, then they come to you.
Right.
Okay. But the death penalty cases go straight from the district court because only district courts can do death penalty cases, and they come straight to you guys.
That's right.
Okay. Wow. Those are hard cases. I'm sure they're hard cases.
They are hard cases. The death penalty writs tend to be very long. People file long pleadings, and they raise things that were not raised on direct appeal.
Why not?
They want to, when you're on habeas, you can add to the record.
Now, again, these are guys sitting in jail.
Right.
All right, so they've already been convicted.
Right.
And they're sitting around looking for something to do because they don't want to get executed.
Right.
Right? Okay. And they've already been convicted and appealed to you, and you said, no, thanks, you're going to be executed.
Right.
But they're sitting around on death row, got a pad of paper, start writing.
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, actually, they get a lawyer.
Oh, they do?
On
Okay.
death penalty cases, for their first writ of habeas corpus, there's a statute that entitles them to counsel.
Okay. All right. All
So
right.
they have lawyers, and the lawyers they will allege things that didn't come up in the trial, or they fill out the record, and they say, for instance, my lawyer was ineffective
Okay.
because this was going on and he didn't tell me about it, or he failed to object when he should have, and if he had objected, I would have gotten a new trial.
Had an alcohol problem, had health problems.
Right.
Was lazy.
Things that don't show up in the record of the trial.
Sure, okay.
They go out and get affidavits
Okay.
from people
Okay.
to swear to things that would challenge the constitutionality of the conviction.
Okay. All right. All right. And you get a lot of those.
We do, and they're very, very long, as I said, and very time-consuming. And there are some really good lawyers working on death penalty habeas cases.
And so you have to give it another look.
We do.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying those are probably the most time-consuming, because they're long records, and they raise good issues.
You just do a lot of reading.
I do. I
Holy
do a
cow.
lot of reading. My eyes have gotten really bad.
I just had my eyes done, by the way,
Okay.
and cataracts are gone, and I've got these cool little lenses that I feel like a bionic guy a little bit. So if
Yeah.
you need some help with that, let me know. I'll
Okay.
give a referral. But wow. And then, but it's not just you reading. There's other judges on the court.
Yes.
How many judges?
There are 9 of us.
Okay.
And the 9 of us vote on everything. Some intermediate courts use panels of 3.
Uh-huh.
If they have a big court, we don't do that.
All 9
All
get involved.
9 get involved in every case.
Oh,
That's
wow.
right.
All right.
And we have a large central staff that helps us tremendously. And a lot of them have been there a long time. The court as a whole has about 80 employees.
My goodness. Okay. That is a big operation then. And you're in charge of that because you're the presiding judge.
Right.
Huh. That's HR issues.
We get them.
We get them here too. We don't like them. You don't like them.
Right. But that is
wow.
part of my job, yeah.
Sure. Wow. And you are elected.
That's right. Elected for a 6-year term. We have staggered elections, so 3 of us are up every 6 years.
Okay. And how long have you been on the court?
29 years.
This is an experienced judge. You've got a lot of experience. Yeah.
I do.
And you're up for election this year.
This year.
Okay. Sharon Keller, Republican.
Republican,
All right.
right.
Now these are all Texas judges are elected by parties, and in some states they're appointed. In some states they're nonpartisan elections, but in Texas we have partisan elections, which frankly I like. It gives the voter at least some indication of where a judge might be philosophically, I suppose. And in states where it's a nonpartisan, first of all, nobody's always any judges anyway. I mean, we ask you, can you name me 3 judges? A few of you, viewers, might know a few names on the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, but you probably don't know anybody in the Texas Supreme Court. You probably don't know anybody in the Court of Criminal Appeals, one of these intermediate courts, a district court, a county court law. We had a justice of the peace on a couple episodes ago, Wade, and she did a great job, but you probably maybe know her from that interview, but that's all you know. So having some partisanship, I think, at least gives the voters a little bit more indication of where somebody might be at philosophically.
I think so too.
Yeah, so you've got a primary and then there's a general election.
Right.
Okay. When is the Texas primary?
March 5th.
March 5th. Okay, keep that in mind too.
Right.
All right. So back to the 9 judges. It sounds like a little bit of herding cats.
To say the least.
bet.
These are all statewide elected officials.
Right.
I'm not the boss. I don't tell them what to do.
Okay.
Collegiality among the 9 is very important.
Yes.
And right now we have the most collegial court I've ever served on.
Well, that's a blessing.
Yeah, I've served with about 25 different judges, and this group can get pretty agitated in conference when we're talking about an opinion, but when we leave the conference room, we go to lunch together, we have fun, we enjoy each other's company, and I feel very blessed to have these judges on the court.
You are, because
Yeah.
to let you a little background on me, I was a clerk for the Court of Criminal Appeals back in 1978, 79, and it wasn't very collegial. So a lot of stress between the judges, and the judge I worked for was a great judge, but there was always some tension between him and a colleague or other colleagues between each other, and your offices are next to each other
Right.
too. Last time I remember, and
They
so
are.
you got to get along. Good neighbors.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Go ahead.
Oh, I appreciate the collegiality of my colleagues, and it's I try to set the tone, but it really takes all 9 of us to do that, and we're fairly successful, especially compared to times in the past that I've been on the court.
Good. Now let's talk about a lot of things to talk about. We're going to talk about next. The court makes a ruling, either affirming, that means whatever the trial judge did is correct, and that means in your case that conviction is going to be upheld, or reversing, which means that it's going to go back and either be retried or that person, the convicted criminal, because they're convicted by the time they get to you, is now exonerated. Those are kind of the 2 main things that are going to happen. But let's say they are affirmed. You say, yes, this, sorry you lose. Can they then appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court?
Not directly.
Okay.
They can, but typically they don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
You the final say from the bulk of the cases.
Right, because people are just not going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's not an easy thing to do.
Sure, it's expensive too, I would
And
imagine.
it's expensive, and they're not likely to get heard by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Because the U.S. Supreme Court, like some of the cases you mentioned, you have to take the death penalty cases, but you don't have to take anything else. The U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have to take any case.
Right.
So they can, and they get so many requests.
Right, and we typically may have 1 or 2 cases out of Texas a year that the Supreme Court's interested in.
Okay.
Sometimes none.
Okay, all right, very good, very good. Tell us about some of the more interesting cases you've had.
We've had some very interesting cases.
Okay.
I think one of the ones that sticks in my mind is the Rick Perry case.
Rick Perry, that's Governor Rick Perry.
Governor Rick Perry.
I think I remember this case,
Yeah.
but give me more, because most of you don't, so let's hear what you got.
Okay, well, he was indicted for more than one thing, but primarily for threatening to veto a legislative appropriation if the well, I don't want to get into the details too much, but he was indicted for threatening to veto a bill.
Okay.
And the case came to us, and we said that the constitutional provision that purported to allow him to be prosecuted for vetoing a bill was unconstitutional, and it violated the separation of powers clause of the Texas Constitution, and we ordered the prosecution dismissed. So that was an interesting case. It was high profile, of course, but it had very interesting legal issues
So
too.
Rick Perry, the governor, could have gone to jail for threatening to veto a bill,
Right.
but he can veto bills. And
That's
if you don't do it the way he wants it, he can veto your bill, which happens all the time.
That's right. It's part of his job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. But
Yeah.
some disgruntled legislator or obviously got a DA to bring some charges against him.
Right.
That's interesting. I was thinking about the traffic stop one, too. He had a traffic stop.
He did.
He did. And we're not going to go into what he said, but bless his heart,
Right.
he was upset about something. And anyway, we'll be on
Memorable.
Rick. Yeah, it was very memorable. You're right. Call me personally or send me an email. I'll tell you what happened.
But we've had some other high-profile cases well, I've been around for a long time,
You've been around a long
people
time.
may not remember them all, but there was a 1998 case in Jasper out in East Texas.
Well, I remember this case.
Right, where a number of men tied a black man to the back of the truck and dragged him to death.
Right.
We had that case, and I wrote the opinion affirming the death penalty conviction on one of
And
one
one
of the
was
men.
actually executed.
He
is
has
that
been.
right?
I think John King, I think, was
Right.
executed already.
Right.
The Texas 7 cases come to us.
What are those?
7 men escaped from prison,
Okay.
and they ended up killing a security guard up around Dallas somewhere, and were sentenced to death. And those cases are, I mean, that was a horrible event and also very high profile. Some of the cases that I think are important are not necessarily high profile. One of them was a case called, I think it was Medellin, where a man was sentenced to death, and he complained that that the people who arrested him didn't notify, he was from Venezuela, didn't notify the Venezuelan consulate that he had been arrested, and they were supposed to do that. So he filed a lawsuit in the International Court of Justice in The Hague,
Right.
and they told us that we needed to reconsider our opinion that affirmed the conviction. And
So this is an international court telling the Texas court what to do.
right. And we said, yeah, no.
Yeah, well, you know,
don't get to tell us
you don't
what
have
to
any
do.
jurisdiction over us.
Right.
And once you open that door, then an international court could tell everybody what to do.
Yeah, and we shut that down pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, this is we have a great book we show. We do some workshops around, and the workshops will talk about people who, and we have clients here that have moved from other states, and they want to know if their estate plan from California or North Carolina is still valid in Texas. And we say, well, it is, but it's going to have some problems. We have this book called What Texans Need to Know About the Other 49 States.
Oh,
And when you open the book, all the pages are blank. Because we don't care what they do in those other states. This, by gosh, is Texas.
that's great.
That is great. It's
Yeah.
such a great tool. It's always good for a laugh, but it says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah,
To a
it
certain
does.
extent. So yeah, we don't. I mean, no. There would be constitutional issues, I think, if you bent to that too.
Oh, right. And I mean, I really appreciate the fact that our court, I think, was unanimous on that. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, I can see that, and I've been to The Hague and seen the court. But nice place.
great.
But don't tell me what to do either. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other cases that come to mind?
Well, there was one called Saldano. I didn't write the opinion in Saldano, but it was a case where, again, it was a death penalty case, but not any more high profile than any other death penalty case. But the Attorney General at the time confessed error. And because of,
What that means is the Attorney General said he'd made a mistake.
said the state had made a mistake.
Okay. Yeah.
And we ended up saying, thanks for, telling us that, but you don't get to confess error, and we're going to take it into consideration, but the defendant failed to object to something at trial. He doesn't get to raise it for the first time on appeal.
Okay.
So we again kind of asserted the independence of the judiciary in that case and affirmed the conviction.
Well, and that goes to an excellent point, Sharon. Again, this is Judge Sharon Keller, Presiding Judge of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. Get a good lawyer.
Yeah.
You really have to have a good lawyer. And it's, your life may be at risk, certainly your freedom may be at risk, certainly your reputation may be at risk. And a lot of these things may end up with probation. And we had Sam Bassett on a couple episodes ago. Sam's a renowned criminal lawyer here in Austin, and he went through the difference in parole and probation, and it's a good thing to watch again, folks, if you're interested in this criminal stuff. But having a good lawyer, both at trial and then at appeal, because some lawyers who may be really good trial lawyers don't make good appellate lawyers.
That's absolutely true. It's a totally different job.
Yeah, it is. And writing it the way that you all get it and you understand it, and again, can find out some of the nuances where maybe, again, you were convicted, but maybe you shouldn't have been, or maybe there's an error, maybe they can get it reversed. And one of the benefits of getting it reversed is that, well, maybe you'll be tried and found guilty again, but maybe the state won't try you again.
That happens.
It does happen because they're just tired of it.
Yeah.
They got other cases more important, and we gave it our best shot, we're letting you go. So have a good lawyer and get a good appellate lawyer, and hopefully this won't be personal to anybody here, but holy cow. I mean, DWI looms. You have one extra drink and you're caught on the freeway and you're pulled over and things like that. So get a good lawyer and do what they tell you to do.
Well, I'll tell you one thing since we're on that subject. When I first started practicing law, judges appointed counsel
Yes.
to indigent defendants however they wanted to.
Okay.
In 2001, the legislature passed the Fair Defense Act and said,
Okay.
we want some kind of statewide oversight and we're going to help fund indigent defense. So the first year, I've been the chairman since it was initiated in 2002.
Okay.
The first year, the legislature gave us $7 million and said, you need to distribute this money to
the lawyers who are...
To the lawyers. We aren't going to tell you how to do it, and you have oversight. Every county needs a plan about how
Okay.
they're going to appoint counsel.
And that's 254
54.
counties. Wow.
So we quickly came up with kind of an interim plan for that first pot of money.
Sure.
But over the past more than 20 years now, we have developed what never existed before in Texas, which is a statewide system of indigent defense.
That is great because despite the fact you want to get a really good lawyer, maybe you can't afford a lawyer.
Right.
Sure.
So now we not only distribute money to the counties, and we only pay for maybe 12 or 13% of the cost of indigent defense. Counties bear most of the burden. We have statewide oversight, and counties file their plans, and our commission, the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, has two basic criteria, I guess,
Okay.
for deciding how to do something. One is we want to reduce bureaucracy. So anytime we can help the counties do something, we do. We try not to burden them too much. And the other is that we defer to local authorities when we can.
Sure.
If a county is not living up to its obligations on appointing counsel, we don't punish them. We give them money, we give them help from our staff, and we try to get them in compliance. And I think that that's one reason that the commission has been successful over the years. It was not a popular idea among a lot of judges.
I imagine. Sure, I would think so.
But we really have, I mean, we do help counties.
Right.
And the local judges and local county commissioners come up with ideas that would never work if we forced them on people, but they've been highly successful. There's for instance, a regional public defender office for capital cases. It started up in the Panhandle with about 80 counties, because there weren't enough lawyers to do death penalty
Well, and
cases.
these are little bitty counties. I mean,
They
these are
are.
counties with maybe, Loving County's got 68 people.
Right.
I mean, some have maybe 4,000 people in the whole darn county. Sure, I
Lots
can
of
see
small
that.
counties,
Sure.
and no lawyers to handle death penalty cases. So they came together, created an office, and they pay what's called murder insurance. If they have a death penalty case or a
Right.
capital case, they get a lawyer. The county doesn't have to pay for it.
I see.
A lawyer, an investigator, and various other things that would be a burden on the county.
Sure. Right.
So that would never have worked if we'd said, you're going to do this. But because it's voluntary, we have probably 185 counties participating now,
Great.
and that's got national awards.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, and again, many of these people who are going to be accused of capital murder are indigent,
Yeah.
and they need good representation. And back to the taxpayer, if they don't get good representation, they're going to file a writ. They're going to end up in the Court of Criminal Appeals. They're going to ask to have the conviction overturned because they didn't have a good lawyer. Now we have to go back and retry the case, and this may be 10, 20 years after the original
Yeah.
crime was committed, and the witnesses have to go through everything again. It's horrible. So having a good lawyer represent them and do a good job.
Right. We want it done right the first time.
Yeah, you do it right the first time, and that saves money. It just saves a lot of tragedy and a lot of heartaches. That's really, really smart. Very good. Anything else you want to share with us about your administrative duties?
Our court is, as I said, a very collegial place to work, but there are really three parts of the court.
Okay.
There's the judges, the central staff, which are a bunch of lawyers that help us, and then the clerk's office. And sometimes the three areas of the court don't necessarily know what the other ones are doing. So I try to participate and oversee the whole thing. And when I say collegial, it's not just the judges, it's our attorneys. If somebody's behind on their work, another attorney will come over and volunteer to pick up their cases. Same thing with judges. If somebody is getting behind for one reason or another, some of us will go say, let me write that opinion, I'll do
Right.
it. And the same thing with the clerk's office. There's been a time where we were severely understaffed in the clerk's office because we were not getting as much money as we needed to offer employees. Yeah. And one of the other judges and I were talking to the clerk one day, and she seemed pretty much at her wit's end. Both of us showed up the next morning at 8 o'clock without talking to each other and said, what can we do?
Huh.
So I learned how to run payroll. I learned how to pay warrants.
Is that right?
It is.
That's cool.
So it's a wonderful place to work. It really is. I just love the people there, and I feel very blessed to have that job.
Well, we're glad to have you in office. We're glad
Thank
that
you.
you've been there for 29, almost 30 years. And so let's go back over this because we're going to wrap up on this. This is the Court of Criminal Appeals, again, an obscure court, but no more important court in this state than the Court of Criminal Appeals. The Supreme Court, again, everybody's heard about the Supreme Court. Wonderful court, good judges. They don't do any criminal cases. You get them all. Okay, this is the meat grinder of the law right here. This is just where the rubber meets the road. If somebody gets sued and they end up in the Texas Supreme Court one way or another, they're going to have to pay some money in damages. They end up in your court, they can go to jail, they can be executed. This is serious stuff. So to know that it's there is important. To know that Judge Keller's there is really important. Again, and we've got some deadlines coming up. We got a primary coming up, then we have a general election coming up. So give her some thought, give her some care. We didn't start off with this being a campaign commercial for you, but it kind of turned into one. So I love her. She's a great gal and a great judge. And so give that some thought. All right. We'll be back soon with another episode of the State of the Union, and we will, I think our next episode is going to be highlighting the charity, and the charity we're going to highlight is the Ronald McDonald House, which again is a kind of a familiar name, but what the heck do they do? So come back and watch that one too. So thanks for being a viewer, thanks for being a listener, thanks for sharing this with any friends you've got, and this is Texas Trust Law with the State of the Union. Thanks again.